Classical Music Readers, Level 4. The Works of Edvard Hagerup Grieg. Copyright 2023 Seed Learning. All rights reserved. Who was Edvard Hagerup Grieg? Edvard Hagerup Grieg was born in Bergen, Norway, in 1843. He came from a very musical home. His mother, who was a concert pianist, was his first piano teacher. During his childhood, Grieg went to several schools, where he was regularly bullied by his classmates. The piano became his escape from his bullies, so he spent a lot of time alone playing piano music. He quickly became a highly talented pianist at a very early age and started composing when he was quite young as well. At the age of 15, Grieg entered the Leipzig Conservatory, a respected music school in Germany. Unsurprisingly, he concentrated on studying the piano. He really enjoyed all the concerts and recitals that he was able to attend in Leipzig. However, he did not enjoy being a student at the conservatory. Despite his dislike of the school, he still did well there. Grieg had the opportunity to travel around Europe, which greatly helped him in his career. He was able to meet other musicians who influenced him, shaping who he would become and what he would write. In 1863, Grieg went to Copenhagen and met the Norwegian composer Rikard Nordraak, who had composed Norway's national anthem. Nordraak showed him how wonderful Norwegian folk music was. Grieg had not heard any Norwegian folk music until Nordraak introduced him to it. This was a turning point in his career. From then on, the music he wrote was often inspired by this music. When Nordraak died, Grieg composed a funeral march in his honor. In 1870, Grieg met the great Hungarian pianist Franz Liszt in Rome. They played Grieg's Violin Sonata No. 1 together, which Liszt was quite excited about. Grieg spent most of his time conducting and playing the piano in concerts across Europe. At these concerts, he performed only his own works. In 1903, Grieg also made some gramophone recordings of his piano pieces. These are some of the very first recordings that were ever made. The sound quality is not very good, but they show that Grieg was an excellent pianist. Grieg died in 1907 after suffering from breathing problems for most of his life. At his funeral, thousands and thousands of people went out on the streets of his hometown to honor him. Following his wishes, his own funeral march for Rikard Nordraak was played, as well as the funeral march by Frédéric Chopin. Piano Concerto in A minor, Opus 16, 1868. At the age of 24, Grieg wanted to make his mark on the world with Piano Concerto in A minor, his first work to use an orchestra. The instruments Grieg used for this work include a solo piano, 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 2 horns, 2 trumpets, 2 trombones, a tuba, timpani, and strings. Grieg lacked experience in composing for so many instruments at once. However, from the very first notes, this work sounds totally confident in the orchestral writing throughout all movements. The concerto shows strong evidence of his interest in Norwegian folk music. The structure is similar to the traditional music of Grieg's homeland. Grieg rewrote the work at least 7 times, usually in small ways. However, the rewrites totaled over 300 differences from the original. The final version of the concerto was finished only a few weeks before Grieg died. It is this version that has become popular worldwide. Piano Concerto in A minor is the only concerto Grieg ever completed. It was an instant success, and many expected him to follow it up with a second. But Grieg never chose to write another. People often compare Grieg's Piano Concerto in A minor to Robert Schumann's Piano Concerto in A minor, because they are both in the same key and have a similar style. In fact, Grieg was influenced by Schumann and learned the piano from a good friend of Schumann. Peer Gynt, Opus 23, 1876. The Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen asked Grieg to compose music for the very first performance of a play he had written about the Norwegian hero Peer Gynt. Grieg did not really want to, and he found it very difficult. He worried that he would not finish in time. In the end, the orchestral music Grieg composed for the play was a great success. In the play, Peer Gynt meets a troll king in a fantasy. Peer Gynt enters the Mountain King's hall. There is a large crowd of trolls, and the king sits on his throne. There is a loud discussion in the hall. The trolls sing about the terrible things they want to do to Peer Gynt, like boil him in a soup. The piece of music that Grieg wrote for this scene is known as In the Hall of the Mountain King. It is one of Grieg's most recognizable pieces and has been used over the years in TV, movies, and video games. The piece begins slowly and quietly, played first by the cellos, double basses, and bassoons. Then, the main theme changes slightly and is played on different instruments. The two groups of instruments then move in and out of different octaves until they eventually meet each other at the same pitch. The tempo slowly speeds up and the music becomes increasingly loud and energetic. Violin Sonata No. 3 in C minor, Opus 45, 1887. Throughout his career, Grieg composed 3 violin sonatas. The first 2 were written fairly quickly, but the third took him much longer. This third sonata was one of his personal favorites. It also remains his most popular work for the violin. So, what is a sonata? A sonata is a piece of music for one instrument, or in this case, one instrument with another supporting instrument. In this piece, the piano accompanies the violin. The word sonata comes from the Italian sonare, which means to sound. In 3 movements, Grieg pushes the limits of the violin. He uses rhythm and time in interesting ways to bring the violin and piano together. And, of course, he adopted Norwegian folk melodies and rhythms in writing this sonata too. Grieg himself once explained, "The traditional way of life of the Norwegian people, together with Norway's legends, Norway's history, and Norway's natural scenery, stamped itself on my creative imagination from my earliest years." No wonder he is to Norway what Shakespeare is to England.